She laughed at my prenup while lying naked in a hotel room I paid for, then bragged about it over dessert. That's when I decided to erase her entire life. I sat alone at our table in Le Jardin, the upscale French restaurant where Sienna and I had celebrated our 3rd anniversary. The same place where she'd fed me chocolate soufflé from her spoon and whispered promises against my ear. Tonight, the ambiance felt wrong. The warm candlelight that should have created intimacy only emphasized the empty chair across from me. The soft jazz melody drifting through the dining room seemed to mock the silence between us. I adjusted my tie for the 3rd time, unbuttoned my jacket, then buttoned it again. My fingers drummed silently against my thigh as I maintained perfect posture. The waiter approached, concern barely disguised behind his professional smile. "Another few minutes, sir." "She's on her way." I replied, my voice steady despite the knot in my stomach. My watch read 7:52 p.m. 25 minutes late. No text message, no call, just silence and the pitying glances from nearby diners. Then Sienna appeared in the doorway. The overhead lights caught the vibrant red of her lipstick, the same shade she'd worn on our 3rd anniversary, the one I'd once compared to summer cherries. Now it looked like dried blood, harsh and cold. She wasn't wearing it for me. She didn't remove her trench coat, didn't touch up her makeup in the entryway mirror like she usually did, didn't kiss my cheek in greeting. She simply dropped into her chair as if arriving for a dental appointment. She opened the wine menu without meeting my eyes. "Sorry I'm late. I tried to salvage the evening. I've already chosen the main course. Would you like to order something specific?" "Whatever's fine. I'm hungry." Her tone was flat, disinterested. Her phone vibrated. She checked it immediately. A quick glance followed by the barest hint of a smile I pretended not to notice. Reaching for a piece of bread, maintaining my composure, as I quietly observed, traffic was terrible. She offered finally. "It took me half an hour just to get here from the office." I nodded, saying nothing about driving past the Marriott at 6:40 p.m. and seeing her car in the parking lot. The custom license plate I'd given her for our 2nd anniversary, the gift that had made her eyes water as she'd whispered, "You make me feel like a princess." Now it was just evidence with personalized plates. The waiter poured our water. Her phone vibrated again. She didn't flip it face down or try to hide the notification. When our appetizers arrived, raw tuna for her French onion soup for me, her phone buzzed a 3rd time. She laughed. It was her nasal laugh, the one she used to save for me alone when I quoted ridiculous sci-fi movies while lying next to her in bed. I was suddenly an outsider in my own marriage. When she lifted her wine glass, her phone screen lit up. I wasn't trying to look, but the message was impossible to miss. "Can't wait till this is over, dessert. Not marriage, LOL. Tyler." I said nothing, staring down at the congealed cheese on my soup. In my mind, it was like a gunshot in a library, silent to everyone else, but shattering everything I knew. "Would you care for dessert?" the waiter asked later. Sienna's eyes brightened. "Creme brulee with an espresso, please." I smiled thinly. "Good, you enjoy your dessert. I'll take care of the bill." As she savored her first bite, I recalled the lights in the hotel window where her car had been parked, and the hidden calendar entry I discovered on her Google account, Q2 Sync, private briefing, attendee Tyler Crane. The check couldn't come soon enough. The drive home felt like an eternity. Sienna's eyes never left her phone, her thumb scrolling endlessly while I navigated through the city in silence. The space between us in the car was filled with unspoken accusations and betrayal. Back home, she locked herself in the bathroom without a word. I walked straight to my office, flipped on the desk lamp, and opened my laptop. The folder named Clause 12B, Active Surveillance, contained everything I'd been collecting for months. Spreadsheets, meticulously tracking timelines, hotel photographs with timestamps, identity notes, screenshots of conversations, and credit card expense reports. The digital paper trail of a marriage disintegrating. This hadn't started on a whim. I remember the exact moment my suspicions were first confirmed: February at her company gala. Sienna had worn an emerald necklace I'd never seen before. When I asked about it, she'd laughed that practiced laugh she used with clients. "Oh, the team gave it to me for hitting our quarterly numbers." 2 weeks later, I received an invitation to a colleague's dinner. The host was wearing identical emerald cufflinks. Sienna just shrugged. Their matching gifts symbolic. That night, while she slept with her back to me, I opened my laptop and created my first Excel file, Clause Enforcement Tracker, 12B. In the notes column I typed, "No evidence yet, just intuition, but that laugh today wasn't for me." I hired Mr. Halterman the following week. He'd done investigative work for my father years ago. Old school, no digital trail hand-delivered reports. Within 2 months he'd provided everything I needed. Photos of Sienna entering a hotel with Tyler. His hand on the small of her back, her head tilted in that specific way I once thought was reserved for me. Images of them at a Denver hotel lounge. 2 cocktails on the table. Her favorite gin martini with extra olives and something amber-colored for him. A particularly damning shot of her leaving a hotel hair wet, carrying a canvas tote bag I'd never seen in our home. I verified everything myself. Credit card statements showed a night at a Chicago hotel with 2 whiskeys and a bottle of Pinot Noir, charged to the room, the wine she always called her heartbreak wine, when we watched sad movies together. A Denver hotel charge on Tyler's personal card, not his company account. Her company calendar marked team meeting location TBD for both dates. Each inconsistency was filed away in a folder labeled Inconsistencies Exhibit B. No accusations, no confrontations, just evidence. The signs at home became more obvious once I knew what to look for. Every night she'd step onto the porch, for some air. 30 minutes later she'd return with a glow in her eyes, her head slightly tilted hair, tousled as if freshly washed. I pulled our home phone records, 47 calls in a single month, most after midnight, all to a number saved as Team Ops. A simple people search confirmed what I already knew. Tyler Crane, married with 2 children, worked at the same company as Sienna. What kept me patient through this betrayal was something Sienna never bothered to understand. The prenuptial agreement, she'd called it paperwork to line drawer bottoms, when she signed it barefoot in our old apartment. Cheap wine in hand. "You think I'm marrying you for money?" She'd laughed. "What is this? Some TV drama?" I kept the original in a fireproof safe. Every purchase, every home renovation, every car, all drawn from my personal trust, carefully separated from joint assets. Not paranoia, just preparation. Tonight after the restaurant, I retaped the note beside my computer monitor. "Don't make the wolf howl. Give it reason to bite." As I scrolled through the evidence, a chat tab flashed on my screen, a recovered message from our shared iCloud backup. "If there's a next life, I'd choose you first. No marriage needed just to fall asleep in these arms again. Sienna." I smirked bitterly. "Funny thing is, you did say that to me once, 10 years ago, and not in a text message." The message wasn't meant for me. It was for Tyler. The same line recycled for a new lover. I closed the laptop and leaned back in my chair, the silence of our home buzzing in my ears. Upstairs, I heard the shower running, washing away evidence that I'd already documented. She thought she was careful. She had no idea what was coming. Tomorrow I'd make the first move in a game. She didn't even know we were playing. The prenup she'd laughed at while making promises to another man had just become her undoing. Morning arrived with clinical purpose. I printed every photograph Mr. Halterman had provided, carefully labeling each with timestamps, locations, and cross-references to Sienna's work calendar. This wasn't about emotion anymore. It was about calculation. I numbered each event chronologically, arranging them in a sequence that would stand up in court. The narrative they told was undeniable. 14 months of systematic deception, complete with hotel receipts, falsified meeting schedules, and time-stamped photographs. Using forensic software I'd purchased 3 weeks earlier, I scanned the metadata of photos from Sienna's iCloud backup. Every digital artifact confirmed what I already knew: there would be no circumstantial evidence defense, no reasonable doubt, just incontrovertible facts. At 9:30 a.m., I walked into Harlan Vick's law office wearing a charcoal overcoat, carrying a black leather portfolio and a mint latte. Harlan wasn't just any divorce attorney. He was the silent executioner behind 3 of the most devastating high-profile divorces in the state. No press leaks, no dramatic courtroom scenes, just complete capitulation from the guilty parties. "Good to see you, Adam," he said, motioning to the chair across from his desk. I arranged my documents on his polished mahogany desk, like a poker hand revealing each piece deliberately. Hidden text messages recovered from iCloud. Infidelity photographs with geolocation data, expense reports showing hotel stays, phone records with timestamps of late-night calls, behavior monitoring logs I'd kept for months. And finally, the prenuptial agreement specifically, Clause 12B signed May 17th, 14 years ago. Harlan read each document methodically, his expression unchanging. When he reached the prenup clause stating, "The adulterous party shall forfeit all rights to property division, alimony, or equitable distribution," he nodded appreciatively. "She didn't just betray you," he said, removing his reading glasses. "She forgot that you're the one who signs the termination orders on this game." "I want this airtight," I replied. "No loopholes for negotiation through tears." Harlan tapped the prenup with his index finger. "This is bulletproof. The evidence is overwhelming. She's not just caught, she's cornered." I pulled out 2 separate manila envelopes. The first is for Sienna, divorce papers with supporting documentation. Harlan nodded. The second is addressed to Tyler Crane's HR department. Harlan's eyebrows raised slightly. The envelope was marked for HR only, urgent, ethics and conduct violations. Inside were expense statements, Tyler's messages about falsifying business trips, company card misuse, calendar fabrications, hotel photographs, and falsified reports. Scorched earth. Harlan commented, "Complete neutralization." I corrected, "I'm not vindictive, I'm thorough." Eliza Monroe entered carrying additional copies of the documents. She'd been my legal assistant for 8 years, a woman Sienna had once dismissively called the photocopier with legs at a house party. Now that photocopier was assembling the machine of Sienna's destruction. Eliza never asked questions when I requested the scanning, notarization, and organization of these documents. She'd only asked one thing: "Do you want these documents filed under personal or business purposes?" "Personal," I'd replied. "But after I clean up this wreckage, I'll rebuild with business." She'd nodded, understanding perfectly. Now in Harlan's office, I reviewed the timeline for delivery. "I want the divorce papers delivered to Sienna tomorrow at noon." "Tomorrow?" Harlan confirmed. "Yes, after our 14th anniversary dinner tonight." Harlan's eyebrows rose again. "You're still going through with the dinner?" "Of course she needs to enjoy her final dessert, without knowing it's the Last Supper." Harlan chuckled softly. "Cold." I shook my head. "No, calculated." I explained my reasoning. Tonight would be the perfect backdrop, a public setting, witnesses if needed, and the poetic justice of her betrayal being sealed over the same dessert she'd shared with her lover. "What about the HR complaint?" Harlan asked. "Deliver it simultaneously with the divorce papers. Maximum impact, no time for either of them to coordinate a response." Eliza made notes while Harlan nodded appreciatively. "One more thing," I added. "I need everything ready for electronic filing the moment I send the text tomorrow night. If she tries to withdraw funds or access accounts, I want them frozen instantly." "Already prepared," Eliza responded, sliding a folder toward me. "Just send the code word and I'll execute everything within 90 seconds. Sienna had never bothered to learn how our financial structures worked. She'd signed papers I put in front of her, attended meetings where I made all the decisions, and blissfully enjoyed the lifestyle without understanding the architecture behind it. That ignorance would now cost her everything. Before leaving Harlan's office, I set my home security cameras to record audio in the living room for the next 24 hours. When Sienna received those papers tomorrow, I wanted to capture her unfiltered reaction, not for pleasure, but for protection against potential claims of harassment or intimidation. As I walked out, Harlan asked, "Are you sure you want to go through with the dinner tonight? Most clients would rather avoid the charade." I paused at the door. "Most clients are reacting to betrayal. I'm responding to it. There's a difference." Back at Eliza's desk, she was compiling the final document package when her computer pinged with a message. I caught a glimpse of the text before she minimized it. "FYI, Tyler's wife just checked the joint Amex clocks ticking." Eliza looked up at me, a question in her eyes. "Not our concern," I said calmly. "The dominoes will fall at our pace, not theirs." As I stepped into the elevator, I felt nothing but clarity. Tonight I would watch Sienna perform her final act as my wife, unaware that tomorrow's script had already been written, with an ending she never saw coming. I arrived at the restaurant 15 minutes early. Our 14th anniversary dinner. The final performance in a marriage that had already died. I'd chosen a crisp white shirt, no tie, with an air of casual confidence that suggested nothing was wrong. I ordered a scotch and waited, watching the door with practiced patience. When Sienna entered, she was radiant, more so than the previous night. Her lipstick was deeper, her hair styled in loose curls, her black lace dress clinging to every curve. There was something in her eyes I recognized instantly, manufactured remorse, the kind she'd perfected for client meetings after missing deadlines. She slid into her seat with a practiced smile. "Hope I'm not late because of some hotel traffic again." She joked, testing my reaction. I smiled thinly. "No worries. Traffic has many routes." She missed my meaning, completely reaching for the wine list with manicured fingers that had touched another man just hours before. Dinner unfolded like a surreal play where only one actor knew the true script. Sienna laughed animatedly, telling stories about work, casually mentioning how Tyler is so stressed with the quarterly reports and complimenting me on keeping in such good shape. Each word was a careful performance designed to mask what she believed I couldn't see. Her phone vibrated twice during the appetizer. Her eyes flickered to the screen before she silenced it. "Something important?" I asked mildly. "Nothing," she replied. "Just weekend team messages." When our main courses arrived, she tapped her wine glass lightly with her spoon, a gesture she knew I once found endearing. "I've been thinking," she said, leaning forward conspiratorially, "we should refresh our marriage. Maybe a trip to Europe. We haven't been to Paris since our 5th anniversary." I nodded, appearing to consider it. Travel would be interesting right now. She smiled, believing she'd successfully redirected any suspicions I might have, the puppeteer unaware that her strings had been cut. When dessert arrived, her creme brulee with the extra espresso she'd ordered, I watched as she tapped the caramelized surface with her silver spoon. The satisfying crack reminded me of the sound my heart had made when I first saw those hotel photos. I reached into my jacket's inner pocket and withdrew a white envelope. Wordlessly, I placed it on the table between us. Her eyes lit up. "Love poetry. I'm guessing a handwritten letter or some kind of apology." I met her gaze directly. "No, it's the final contract between us." Confusion flickered across her face as she opened the envelope. Her expression shifted from curiosity to shock as she read the heading, "Notice of Divorce, Enforcement of Clause 12B." Each page I'd included was precisely calculated for maximum impact. First came Exhibit A detailed timeline with specific dates and times of their encounters. Next was Exhibit B, with photos of her infidelity, each one crushing any possibility of denial. Exhibit C contained hotel receipts and Tyler's personal card statements proving their rendezvous. Exhibit D outlined the legal documentation regarding property rights. And finally, there was a copy of our prenuptial agreement with her own signature. The clause highlighted in bright yellow, "No claim to property in case of infidelity." Her hands trembled as the reality crashed over her. Dean. I mean, Adam, is this some kind of joke? I set my espresso cup down gently, my eyes cold. "No, you've had your dessert. Now comes the bill." She tried to recover her voice, quivering. "This isn't serious. We were just talking. I never betrayed." I unclipped the folder and turned to a marked page, a transcript of text messages I'd recovered. "You're the only reason I get out of bed every morning. I want to wake up beside you forever." Written to Tyler. Sent from your phone. Auto-synced to our shared cloud. The color drained from her face. She reached for her phone as if to delete evidence that I'd already preserved months ago. Then she stopped, realizing the futility. "It's too late," I said quietly. "There's no undo button in contracts." When the waiter brought our dinner bill, I smiled politely. "I'll pay. As always." She whispered, You won't actually do this." I stood up, slipping on my jacket, and gave a slight bow. "I'm not the man you thought I was. But today, I've become the one you can no longer control." Sienna sat frozen, staring at the papers that documented not just her betrayal, but the complete dismantling of her security. Everything she believed was hers. The house, the lifestyle, the financial safety net was evaporating before her eyes. The drive home was silent. Sienna stared out the window, a hollow shell of the confident woman who had walked into the restaurant. Her phone vibrated in her purse. This time she didn't dare look. What she didn't know yet, what would become clear only in the coming hours, was that Tyler had already disappeared from her life. His chat profile would show as inactive, his avatar would vanish, her messages would return. Delivery failed. His social media accounts would no longer list him as a director. She didn't know that while we were eating dessert, Tyler was clearing out his office under HR supervision. She didn't know that the same methodical precision I'd used to document her betrayal had been applied to exposing his company violations. She didn't know that her lover had been neutralized professionally, just as she had been neutralized financially. As we pulled into our driveway, I watched her from the corner of my eye. She was frantically checking her phone now, panic rising as she realized Tyler wasn't responding. The second earthquake was beginning and she had no idea of the aftershocks still to come. I unlocked the front door and held it open for her one last act of courtesy before everything changed forever. "After you," I said, my voice betraying nothing of the satisfaction I felt, as the trap closed completely around her carefully constructed lies. The car's interior felt like a pressure chamber on the drive home. Sienna sat completely silent, her knuckles white as she clutched her phone like it was her last lifeline. I didn't speak either, keeping my eyes fixed on the road ahead. The car stereo played a mellow jazz piece that Sienna had always complained about. Now it served as the perfect soundtrack to our separation. I watched from my peripheral vision, as she repeatedly glanced at her phone's screen without actually opening it. Fear had replaced her earlier confidence. She was afraid of what she might find, or more accurately, what she might not find. When we arrived home, we went our separate ways without a word. Sienna immediately locked herself in the bathroom, while I went straight to my office, activating the security camera monitors I'd installed the previous day. Through the house's silent walls, tension hung like invisible smoke. Through my headphones, I heard her voice, broken, desperate, coming from the bathroom. She was calling Jody, her older sister. "Jody, he knows everything. He has everything. I'm finished." Jody Caldwell's response was cold as ice. "Adam called me 2 weeks ago, not for revenge, to keep you from running headfirst into a stone wall." I smiled slightly. That conversation with Jody had been calculated too. I'd presented myself as the concerned husband worried about his wife's well-being despite her indiscretions. It was a preemptive move to neutralize what would have been Sienna's strongest ally. Through the monitor, I watched Sienna emerge from the bathroom, frantically checking her phone. From her increasingly frantic movements, I could tell she was discovering the second part of my strategy. Tyler was gone, not just from her personal life, but from her professional one too. Her messages weren't delivering. His profile showed unavailable. When she checked LinkedIn in panic, Tyler's Director of Product Strategy title had disappeared. Company emails would already be circulating, announcing his replacement. When she tried calling his number, it would go straight to a disconnected message. While this personal drama unfolded in our home, a parallel scene was playing out at Tyler's company. Monday morning, a thick manila envelope had been delivered to the HR department's desk, boldly marked, "For HR, urgent." Inside was a meticulously organized dossier affair, text messages showing time discrepancies with official meetings, financial fraud documentation, expense reports matching Sienna's business trips, comparisons between Tyler's calendar company expenditures, and falsified emails. The final pages were printouts of the company's ethics policy, with relevant violations highlighted in red. Tyler's Monday had unfolded with brutal efficiency. By morning, his executive floor access was revoked. By noon, he was asked to work remotely, until further notice. By afternoon, all his internal accounts were locked. By 5 p.m., his LinkedIn profile had automatically updated to remove his title displaying "Open to Work" to recruiters. There was no goodbye email, no office announcement. One day, he was Director of Product Strategy. The next, he simply ceased to exist within the company. 3 days later, at Harlan's law office, the mediation session completed Sienna's downfall. She arrived with a pale face, hastily tied hair, and no makeup, a stark contrast to the polished executive she'd cultivated as her identity. "I built that house with him," she argued weakly, attempting to claim half the property. Harlan calmly produced renovation invoices, trust fund withdrawal slips, and construction contracts, all bearing only my name. Each asset was purchased with separate property funds, he explained gently. The fireplace, garage extension, wine cellar, even the landscaping, all paid from Mr. Collins's personal trust, established 5 years before the marriage. Asset by asset, Sienna watched her claims dissolve. The final settlement was devastating in its completeness. She would keep only her family-gifted jewelry, personal clothing items, and one large suitcase. "What about the caramel leather sofa?" she asked, her voice small. "If you can carry it to the curb yourself, it's yours," I replied. "The wedding crystal. Gift from my family. Separate property." A week later, Sienna stood on our front lawn. My front lawn, beside a single suitcase, staring at the house with hollow eyes. Jody's car pulled up, but her sister didn't even step out to help. She merely popped the trunk from inside. Sienna loaded her own suitcase, climbed in silently, and disappeared from my life as the car door closed. An unspoken goodbye after 14 years. Back in my office, I methodically removed her presence from my digital life, deleted Sienna Caldwell. From my contacts, changed shared iCloud passwords, and removed the last wedding photo from my wall. It wasn't vindictiveness, just necessary separation. The notification sound on my computer interrupted my thoughts. An email from Eliza Monroe had arrived. "Media package prepared as requested. Would you like to review the press release draft first thing tomorrow?" I smiled. Unlike Sienna, who had built her identity around being my wife, I had been building something else entirely. What she never understood was that our marriage was just one room in my larger architecture. I could lose that room and still have an entire mansion. Tomorrow, Collins Properties would announce a strategic restructuring. By the time anyone connected it to my personal life, both stories would be old news. The business world would see only strength and decisive action. The personal collapse happening behind the scenes would remain private. The chess moves I'd made weren't about destroying Sienna. They were about protecting what I'd built from someone who had forgotten her place in the blueprint. Tomorrow would begin a new chapter with me holding the pen. I closed the email with a simple response. Perfect timing. Send at 9 a.m. The house felt different that night. Neither empty nor lonely, but clean. Like the silence after a storm has passed, when everything damaged has been swept away and only solid foundations remain. I poured myself a glass of bourbon and raised it to the empty room. "To contracts," I whispered. "Both those we honor and those we break." Monday morning arrived with purpose. I stood at the window of the conference room on the 32nd floor, overlooking the city that now seemed like a vast chessboard beneath me. I wore an ash-gray suit with a navy blue tie, colors of authority and calm calculation. At the walnut conference table, representatives from Hamilton Private Equity sat alongside the newly assembled leadership team of Collins Properties. The leather portfolio before each of them bore the title Partial Acquisition and Strategic Realignment, Collins Properties. "Gentlemen, ladies," I began, taking my seat at the head of the table. "Today marks not just a transition, but a transformation." For the next hour, we reviewed the terms I'd negotiated over the past 6 months, terms that would have been impossible had I still been married. I was divesting 62% of operational control while retaining full ownership of the intellectual property brand, licenses, legacy, land holdings, and heritage properties. The structure allowed me to step back from day-to-day management while maintaining the soul of what I'd built. As the final signatures were collected, Jonathan Mercer, Hamilton's managing partner, shook my hand firmly. "Bold move, Adam. Most founders can't let go of operational control, even when it's the right strategic play." I smiled. "Sometimes letting go of what you don't need is the key to preserving what matters." He nodded, understanding the business principle without realizing its personal application in my life. "I'd like to introduce our new Chief Operating Officer," I announced, gesturing to the woman seated to my right. Eliza Monroe sat poised in a charcoal blazer, her hair pulled back in a sleek, low bun, frameless glasses accentuating her sharp intelligence. The same woman Sienna had once dismissed as a walking photocopier was now second in command of a restructured company worth 9 figures. Ms. Monroe has been instrumental in orchestrating this transition. I continued. Her legal background and operational expertise make her uniquely qualified to lead Collins Properties into its next chapter. The press release caption under her official headshot read, "New leadership stronger than ever." When the meeting concluded and the room cleared, I stood alone at the window. Below me was the city I'd once found suffocating, now reduced to a strategic map of possibilities. The divorce papers had been finalized without litigation or court appearances. Just a man standing alone with full discretion over his future. That evening in my new penthouse apartment, I poured myself a glass of Cabernet. The furniture was minimal but purposeful, nothing resembling the cluttered design choices Sienna had insisted upon in our home. This space was entirely mine, designed for clarity and function. My phone vibrated with a text from Sienna. "I was stupid. You were the best thing I ever had, just one word, just one." There was no period at the end, like a fishing line without a hook, hoping for a response. Any response to pull her back to shore. I typed slowly. "You never read the contracts. Not the one I wrote, nor the one I lived." Then I pressed block without hesitation. The past didn't deserve access to my future. Minutes later, another text arrived from Eliza Monroe. "Dinner at 8. I replied, "I can't wait." The response was professional yet warm. Exactly the boundary I wanted to maintain with the woman who had proven her loyalty and competence. Whatever might develop between us would grow from mutual respect, not desperation or deception. Later that night, I sat on my penthouse balcony watching the city lights emerge as dusk settled. My Cabernet caught the last golden rays of sunset, casting ruby reflections against the glass table. The ceiling fan turned slowly overhead. No music played, only the comfortable silence that survivors of betrayal understand. I took a sip of wine, appreciating the complex notes that revealed themselves gradually. Much like truth, the flavor couldn't be rushed. The past 3 months had been a master class in precision. No emotional outbursts, no public drama. Just methodical execution of a plan designed to protect what I'd built from someone who had taken it for granted. Sienna had laughed at my prenup while lying naked in a hotel room I paid for, then bragged about it over dessert. That moment of realization, watching her lips curve around the word dessert, while knowing whose company she'd just left, had crystallized everything. I hadn't just been betrayed. I'd been dismissed as irrelevant in my own marriage. Her mistake wasn't the affair. It was assuming I lacked the resolve to enforce consequences. As night fell completely over the city, I considered everything that had unfolded. Tyler Crane had lost his career. Sienna had lost her lifestyle. I had restructured my company. All of us had received exactly what our choices had earned us. I didn't need vengeful declarations or dramatic confrontations. Victory didn't require announcement, only the quiet satisfaction of strategic withdrawal. The balcony door slid open behind me. Eliza stepped out, 2 folders in hand. "The transition team needs these signed for tomorrow's announcement," she said, placing them on the table. "And I brought dinner. Nothing fancy, just Italian from that place on 7th. I nodded, gesturing to the chair across from me. "Perfect." As she sat down, I noticed there was nothing tentative in her movements. No fishing for compliments or seeking validation, just comfortable competence. "To new beginnings," I said, raising my glass. "To reading the fine print," she replied with a knowing smile. We ate as the city sparkled below us, discussing the restructuring plan with the ease of partners who respected each other's intelligence. No romance, no pressure. Just 2 adults building something sustainable from the ground up. The end doesn't need a declaration. Only a strategic withdrawal with the spoils of victory,